Hey guys, I'm Joe with Hops and Brews, and I get asked this question a lot. Hey, what's that flavor I'm tasting? Why don't I like it? Well, today I'm going to be talking to you about some of the most common off-putting flavors in beer and why they happen. So something I like to tell people is that craft beer isn't necessarily good beer. It's flavor-forward beer, something that those big domestic breweries seem to lack. Now, what that means is they're really pushing the maximum flavors forward. They're pushing the maximum malt, the maximum hop, the maximum yeast, the maximum special ingredients, the water treatment. Everything is to the max. Now, as craft beer enthusiasts and geeks, we are taking on a percentage that we are expecting to go on this journey of ultimate maximum flavors, but might experience some loss. It's part of the adventure. Something bad happens, and we move on to the next beer. But now there are certain flavors in beers that we shouldn't accept in them because what they are indicating is a bad step in the process of the beer being made. These should be called out. Now I'm going to be talking to you about 5 of the most common off-putting flavors out there. Now, flavor is a very subjective thing. So if you do find a beer with this off-putting flavor, maybe give it to a friend or bring a friend to drink with and see how they describe this beer. And maybe your version of this off-putting flavor isn't theirs and they really enjoy it. Who knows? All right, so let's go ahead and get into what I think are some of the most common off-putting flavors in beer. And number 1, dust. Okay, so first of all, we have dust. This is probably the most common off-putting flavor in beer, and it's usually caused by bad storage. Now, this flavor is caused by improper storage and improper temperature, and it is most commonly found in more of your hoppy style forward beers, your pale ales, your IPAs, things along those. There are certain beers that are meant to be stored for a long time, but not in room degree temperatures. Okay. This is why we're starting to see a lot of breweries put a best by, enjoy by date on their bottles or cans. If you've ever gone to a bottle shop and then see a IPA and there's dust all over the bottle, it's probably not a good sign. Now, like I said, this flavor is very prominent in the hop forward style beers that are designed to be those hoppy, juicy, bittery notes. And the chemical compounds that make those start to get dull and dry and earthy during the times of storage and improper temperature care and even lighting. So if you have an IPA, keep it in a fridge. Simple. Now, the next one I want to talk to you about is wet cardboard flavor. Now, this off-putting flavor also comes from improper storage. Now, this is actually leaning toward more of the maltier side of beers. Now, what this is oxidization that shouldn't be happening inside the beer. A lot of this will also come off tasting, I've heard people say, like a bad caramel flavor. If you ever remember 2000s, early 99s of the first, California multi-pale ale, the Sierra Nevadas, the really old ones, it really has that cardboard flavor. Now, it wasn't because those breweries back then were making bad beer. It was actually the fact that craft brewery wasn't as big back then. So all of the distributors out there were treating it like domestic beers and was just leaving it on the aisle floor stacked and not stored in a cool area. And now if you go to your local grocery store, you're not gonna see stacks of beer on the aisle floor. They're gonna be inside the cool, temperature controlled area. Now, the third most common flavor that we probably get is butter. Now, a lot of you homebrewers out there are probably gonna know exactly what I'm talking about with this buttery flavor. If you have ever brewed a beer before in your life, you have probably experienced this buttery flavor that I'm talking about. Now, this also does happen at your local craft beer and some of the bigger craft beer breweries as well. So it's still a very common flavor issue. Now, this buttery flavor that I'm talking to you about is actually called diacetyl. And there are actually styles of beer that are supposed to have this type of flavor. And we find this more common in the European maltier style pilsners and lagers. Now, however, this flavor is starting to be very prominent in American IPAs and hop forward beers. And it is caused by over dry hopping. Now, how this comes about is by over dry hopping your beers at the wrong time, and starts a chemical reaction that starts to break down even more sugars and restarts the fermentation process again. And what it's doing is fighting against your yeast fermentation and re-giving you new flavors, but all in the wrong way. And really what this happens is that you're getting these off-put flavors because your fermentation starts, then stops, then starts, then stops again. And it's just not good for your beer. This is where you get this buttery flavor, this creaminess that's it's kind of almost oily too. You'll find this very common when a brewery gives you a freshly hopped beer and they send it out to you, and the distributor or you do not keep it cold. And the fermentation process starts up again. And then you get that really tight can. So again, keep your beer cold. Now the fourth flavor I want to talk to you about is, well, kind of different. And that's hops. Yes, hops. You're supposed to have that in your beer, right? Or is it too much of a good thing? Now, like I said at the beginning, craft beer is all about pushing flavors. And sometimes that might be too much and too aggressive. Now, this next flavor is something that's been described to me multiple ways. There's a acid burn, there's a hop burn, there's kind of, some people have even told me garlicky, oniony burn. If you've ever had a raw garlic or onion, it leaves this burn in your throat. This is caused by over hopping your beers. Basically, what I mean by overhopping your beers, it is an intense amount of the hop oils still left in the beer. Now, hops are very aromatic and bittering at the same time, and you have to find the right balance and which hops work together. And in this modern time of beer and new hop variants coming out regularly, and it's very hard to know which ones balance with each other and how much to use. Now, when I also talk about balance and how much to use, I'm also referring to how long to leave it in there and how long it takes for those acids to die down or find the right balance. Like, say, Galaxy hops take a very long time because of their such pininess. They have a big burny oiliness to them. You have to leave them there and let your beer rest for a particular amount of time. Now, if you just bombarded your beer with a bunch of Galaxy and then freshly canned it and pushed it out to everyone, you're gonna get a big acid burn in there. But if you waited a month and let all of that just mellow out in the tank and then can it or keg it, you're gonna have a much more balanced and aromatic to bitterness ratio. And with this modern age of beers are younger and younger and fresher. And brewers just want to keep pumping it out because there's so many new variants coming out there. They want to do that. But again, it's knowing the balance and how it works. And so it's very hard. So you might see this. Now, this issue to me has been very noticeable the past couple of years, but I have noticed that this field is starting to die down ever so slowly because people's understanding of what to do with these new hop variants. Now, just because a beer is good for the first couple of sips doesn't mean it's good all around. So if you are a new home brewer or a new little macro brewery, don't just be throwing hops in all of your beers and just be like, here's a big new hoppy, fresh, hazy IPA. Understand and take a little bit of time to research each individual hop and how they work and the oils in them and how it all needs to mellow out and balance. Okay, now the final flavor I want to talk to you about is very similar to a burn, but it is more of a acid style tart burniness. And what I mean by that is it's that acidic flavor that we are going to be seeing. It is that vinegary-esque sour tart flavors. Kind of almost has a skunkiness to it. Again though, there are beers out there that are supposed to have this, and that is these nice farmhouse or wild fermented ales that are lightly fruited back. They can have this. But you're not supposed to see that in a lot of other styles. Now, this flavor usually comes in the form of oxidization in your beer during the fermentation process. Something bad happened, you got oxygen in there, and it's starting to create microbacteria that shouldn't be there, and it's fighting with your yeast. Now, one of the ways a brewer might see this happen to their beer is there's going to be a spider web-like fermentation process. Usually beers have big foamy heads that are bubbling. You will look at the bubbles and there's almost like these legs or spider webs going off of them. That is bad. That is microbacteria growing on top of your beer and infecting your beer. And basically now your beer is now spoiled. Essentially, you can still drink it, and there are styles that are actually supposed to have that. Like I said, there are wild ales. Flanders Reds are actually one of my personal favorites, but they are an acquired taste. And the yeast used for these beers have been developed for them. So just because something like that happens to your beer doesn't necessarily mean your beer is now spoiled. It's just going to have this tart, vinegary flavor to it. So if you had like an IPA or something, you're probably not gonna want it. Or just maybe add some fruit. You know, you're gonna get a sour note to it. So if you have this flavor, say in a porter, stout, or say Belgian, you don't want those in there because those are malt forward beers and you're not looking for a sour style flavor with that. Sour. Black sours, yeah, whatever. So these are some of the most common off-putting flavors I find in beer today. Now, a lot of these can be just combated by keeping your beer cold and stored in a proper area. But if you do go to your local bottle shop or brewery and then find bottles on the wall that are covered in dust or room temperature and are supposed to be served to you fresh, might be a sign, but go up to them, say, hey, something's wrong here. Why haven't you done this? And also, don't be a dick about it. It might not be the brewery's fault. It might be the distributor or the people they bought it from. Wherever, there could be a number of line of faults in there. Don't go on Untappd and give this a horrible rating and rag on the brewery or the place you bought it from. Talk to them, be nice. Maybe have someone else try that beer and without you telling them the flavors that you got, see if they get those flavors. Again, flavor is subjective. So have any of these flavors reminded you of beer that you might have tried and been like, yeah, something's wrong with that? Let me know. Cheers. Hey guys, thanks for watching this video. Remember, hit like and subscribe. Follow me on all my social media stuff. The links will be at the very bottom of the description. Again, have you ever had any of these flavors show up in a beer? Are there other flavors that you think are very common in beers that you found that you hate? Are there other off-putting flavors that you commonly find in beers? Let me know in the comments below. See you guys.